Mom, maybe skip the potatoes next time, my son said as he scraped his fork too loudly on the porcelain. Then he added, we're not on the farm anymore. Food isn't free. That night, I lay stiff on a cot in their garage. The air smelled like old rubber and car oil. The floor bit into my hip through a paper-thin mattress, while upstairs they opened a bottle of wine I once gave them. I used to deliver babies in snowstorms. Now I was being rationed like leftovers. My name is Odelyn. I'm 76. And this is the story of what happens when a mother stops swallowing her silence. Where in the world are you listening from? Subscribe if you've ever been treated like a ghost in your own family. The truth is, I hadn't planned on leaving my farm. After Harlan passed, everyone assumed I'd sell the land and move closer to family. But that wheat field was my heartbeat. The porch with the warped plank third from the left, that was my chapel. And that kitchen with the burnt coffee smell in the mornings and the window over the sink, that was where I grieved, healed, and grew old on my own terms. I lived quiet but full. I baked bread every Saturday, mended my own fences with wire and stubbornness, planted marigolds for Harlan each spring. He always said yellow flowers made a place feel watched over. My son Cassian would call on holidays, sometimes with a voicemail and sometimes not. He was a good baby once, always reaching for me with sticky fingers and a crooked grin. But something about the world hardened him, maybe money, maybe pride. I didn't blame him. Until he showed up one October afternoon with his wife Delara. They drove up in a sleek black car that crunched across the gravel like it hated being there. Delara wore a coat that looked too thin for the season, but too expensive not to flaunt. Cassian hugged me with one arm while still talking into his Bluetooth earpiece. Mom, he said, smiling, you really shouldn't be out here alone anymore. I laughed, mostly out of habit. I've been out here alone for 12 years, love. He didn't laugh with me. Delara was the one who spoke next. We've actually been thinking, she said sweetly. You'd be so much more comfortable with us in Rosevale Creek. We've got space, a proper guest room, and Sarah's starting school, so it'd be amazing to have you nearby. Her eyes didn't blink much. Her smile didn't shift even when I coughed into my sleeve. They stayed for an hour, drank my tea without touching the cookies, walked the fence line with me like tourists visiting an old ruin. Cassian took a phone call halfway through, talking loudly about asset liquidity and Q4 timelines. Delara snapped pictures of the sky, never once asking about the barn or the trees Harlan planted for each anniversary. Still, something about hearing home in their voices made me hesitate. That night I sat by the fireplace wrapped in Harlan's old jacket, staring into the embers. Maybe they were right. Maybe it was time. When I agreed, Cassian beamed. Delara said, we're so happy, it's the right thing to do. I packed a small suitcase, just the essentials. A framed photo of our wedding day, my recipe book, one of Harlan's flannel shirts, and my favorite mug, chipped but reliable. As we drove away, I didn't cry. Not until I looked back one last time and saw Ruthie waving from her porch, both hands in the air, tears shining in her glasses. That was the last time the wind smelled like home. The house in Rosevale Creek looked like something from a catalog, white shutters, 2-car garage. Manicured hedges cut like cubes. It smelled faintly of lavender spray and furniture polish, not like home, but like a place that worked too hard pretending to be one. Delara gave me a quick tour the moment we arrived. Here's the kitchen fully renovated. I nodded. Everything gleamed. Chrome marble glass, no warmth, no dish towel out of place, no scent of cinnamon or real butter. And down this hall is where you'll be staying, she said, gesturing toward a narrow staircase. We're still updating the guest suite upstairs, but this will be cozy for now. She opened the door to a finished basement. Technically, yes, but it was cold and windowless and smelled of old paint and cardboard. A single cot sat in the corner, neatly made with a throw blanket and one pillow. Plastic bins labeled XMAS and baby stuff lined the far wall. A space heater buzzed in the corner like it was giving up. I tried to make it welcoming, Delara said, her voice too cheerful. There's an outlet for your charger, just careful not to trip on the extension cord. Cassian came down a minute later, carrying my suitcase with one hand and his phone in the other. Hope this works for a while, Mom. It's quiet down here, good for resting. I thanked them both, smiled even, because what else was I supposed to do? Later that evening over dinner, I offered to help set the table. Delara hesitated before handing me the plates, white porcelain with gold rims. We don't usually use these, she said pointedly, but I guess it's a special night. I said nothing. My hands shook a little as I laid the forks. I hadn't eaten all day, but I wasn't sure if I was allowed to feel hungry. The food was fine. Perfectly portioned, lightly seasoned, but it tasted like silence. Cassian spent most of the meal on his phone. Delara asked if I had a schedule or routine she should know about. I usually wake up early, I offered. I like to make coffee, take a walk if I can. Delara smiled. We'll see how that fits in with Sarah's morning prep. When I returned to the basement that night, the cot creaked beneath me. The walls felt too close. I clutched Harlan's shirt like a child clutches a stuffed toy. Above me, the sound of laughter. A clink of glasses, then a door closing. It was the first night I ever felt like a visitor in my own bloodline. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. The basement was colder than I remembered. My breath fogged in the air as I sat up, joints popping like old wood. I slipped on my house shoes and shuffled upstairs. The house was still quiet until I stepped into the kitchen. Delara stood at the counter, already dressed, her blouse sharp, her coffee steaming. "You're up early," she said, like it was a surprise. "I thought I'd make breakfast," I offered. Her smile tightened. "Already done. We use oat milk and almond flour now. There's a schedule we like to keep, but maybe you could help pack Sarah's lunch." A piece of paper lay on the table, color-coded, titled Grandma's Daily Routine. Monday through Friday, 6:00 a.m., wake up. Make breakfast by 6:30, pack lunches by 7:00, help Sarah dress, wipe down kitchen counters, laundry sort, wash, fold, prep dinner ingredients by 4:10, quiet time 4:30 to 6:30. I blinked. This is every day. Delara sipped her coffee. "We just want you to feel involved. You hate being idle, don't you?" That word again, useful. Like I was a tool, not a person. I followed the routine, not because I agreed, but because I didn't want conflict. I told myself this was temporary, an adjustment. But as days passed, the requests turned to expectations. One morning, I was 5 minutes late to start the laundry. The basket had only a few shirts in it. But Delara noticed. "Just a reminder," she said, tapping the schedule. "Consistency helps everyone." Another day, Sarah spilled juice on the floor. I was already cleaning it when I heard Delara murmur behind me, "Thank goodness she's here." It wasn't gratitude, it was ownership. Cassian said little. He worked late, came home, kissed his daughter, praised the pasta I cooked, then disappeared into the den. He never asked how I was doing. One evening, while wiping the counter for the third time, my back ached so fiercely I had to lean on the sink. Delara walked in, looked at the half-done counter, and asked, "Is something wrong?" I smiled. "No, just taking a moment." "Well, make sure Sarah's uniform is folded by bedtime. She has picture day tomorrow." She walked off before I could reply. I pressed my palms to the sink and took a breath. This wasn't help. This wasn't care. This was polite captivity. The first real crack came during dinner. It was a Thursday. I remember because I had made cornbread from scratch, the way Harlan liked it, golden crisp edges, soft in the middle. Sarah loved it too. She even asked for seconds, and I warmed a slice with a pat of honey butter. Cassian was scrolling through his phone again when Delara made a face. "Is that real butter?" she asked, like I had served poison. "Yes," I said gently. "Just a little. It's cornbread." Delara set down her fork. "Mom, I thought we talked about this. We're watching our cholesterol. And Sarah's had enough starch." Before I could reply, Cassian looked up, annoyed not at her, but at me. "Yeah, Mom, maybe go easy next time. Food's not cheap anymore. We can't eat like it's the farm." His tone was casual, but it struck me harder than I expected. I stared at my plate, at the cornbread I'd made with shaking hands that morning, and suddenly it tasted bitter. I didn't eat another bite that night. The next day, Delara rearranged the pantry. She placed her groceries on one side and mine on the other. I noticed a sticky note that read, "Avoid excess carbs," stuck beside a box of rice I had brought with me. Subtle, cold, effective. I tried not to let it show. I kept cooking, kept folding the laundry, kept picking up Sarah from school when they were busy. But something shifted in the air. One morning, I forgot to refill the Brita filter. Delara said nothing until Cassian got home. At dinner, he casually remarked, "Mom's been slipping up lately. I guess that happens with age." He chuckled. Delara smiled behind her wine glass. I forced a smile too, but inside something nodded. That night, I wrote in my notebook for the first time in months. Just a few lines, but they were mine. They want me to disappear, but only after I've served. Another day, Sarah ran to hug me after school, arms tight around my waist. Delara pulled her away gently, whispering something I didn't hear. Later, when I bent to pick up Sarah's backpack, my knee gave a loud pop, and I winced. Delara didn't look up from her laptop. She just said, "Maybe skip the squats, Mom. We don't need you getting hurt too." That night, I sat on my cot in the basement, knees throbbing, clutching Harlan's shirt like a life raft. Above me, laughter again. A door shut. Then silence. And for the first time since I moved in, I didn't feel like a mother. I felt like the help. The move to the garage wasn't a conversation. It was an announcement. "We need more space upstairs," Delara said one Sunday morning over breakfast. She didn't look at me, just stirred her chia pudding while Cassian scrolled through his tablet. I blinked. More space. "For my yoga studio," she said, as if that explained everything. "And Sarah needs quiet for her piano lessons. The acoustics are better if she practices without noise from downstairs." Cassian chimed in. "It's just for a few weeks, Mom. The garage is insulated. I'll move your things down later today." No one asked if I was okay with it. No one mentioned the cold, or the smell of oil and rubber, or the fact that I'd be sleeping beside a pile of lawn chairs and Christmas decorations. By evening, my cot had been dragged next to the tool bench. A space heater hummed in the corner, but the chill in the concrete floor crawled up through my socks. There were no windows, just one dangling bulb that buzzed when I pulled the string. I set my photo of Harlan on an old milk crate and sat quietly. My knees ached, my lungs burned from the cold. And yet, I didn't say a word. Not when Delara tossed down a folded blanket like she was throwing out old towels. Not when Cassian kissed Sarah goodnight and walked past the garage without checking on me. Not even when I realized they hadn't given me a key to the house. The door locked from the inside. If I needed to use the bathroom after 10 p.m., I had to knock. That first night in the garage, I woke up shivering. The heater had shut off. My breath came out in little clouds. I wrapped Harlan's shirt tighter around me and whispered, "What would you have done, old man?" No answer. Just the drip of condensation off the water heater and the hum of the freezer beside me. The next morning, I made eggs like usual. I packed Sarah's lunch, folded laundry, swept the hallway. At lunch, Cassian walked in, saw me preparing sandwiches and said offhand, "Careful with the turkey, Mom. You've been eating more lately." Then he laughed, a soft, careless laugh. And just like that, something snapped. Not loudly, not like glass breaking. More like a thread inside me finally giving out after too much pull. That night, I didn't write in my notebook. I didn't cry. I just sat on the edge of my cot staring at the closed garage door, not thinking about revenge, just wondering how long it would take before I vanished completely. It was the 4th Tuesday of the month. I remember because that's trash day in Rosevale Creek, blue bin for recyclables, green for general waste. I hauled both bins out step by aching step, the cold biting through my gloves. That morning, the garage had flooded a little. Rain had slipped under the warped door, soaking the corner where I kept my shoes. When I told Delara, she barely looked up from her phone. "Maybe stack the crates higher next time. It's just water." I nodded, limped back into the damp garage, sat on my cot, and tried not to shiver. It wasn't the water, it wasn't the cold. It was the way she said, "Just water," like it was my fault for noticing I was being slowly erased. Later that day, Ruthie called. She hadn't heard from me in weeks. I told her I'd been settling in. She asked to visit. I hesitated, then agreed. She showed up the next morning, coat buttoned to the neck, carrying a small thermos of spiced tea. I met her outside. I didn't want her to see where I slept. But Ruthie was sharp. She saw the cracks in my smile, the trembling in my hand. "You're not okay," she said. I looked away. "It's temporary." She didn't buy it. She never did. Her eyes narrowed. "Did you sign anything before moving in?" That stopped me. I told her about the paperwork Cassian brought over months ago, how he said it was just formalities, that it helped with his business expansion. I'd signed because I trusted him, because he was my son. Ruthie didn't flinch. She pulled something from her coat pocket, a card. "Legal aid. I know someone. She used to be a prosecutor. You don't have to fight Odie, but you do have the right to stop being stepped on." That night, I stared at the card for hours, until I finally reached for my notebook and wrote, "Tomorrow I begin again." The next morning, I waited until the house emptied. Cassian had left early for the office. Delara had a back-to-back scheduled gym, then Pilates, then a meeting at the country club. Sarah was already off to school. I stayed behind, not to clean, not to fold laundry, but to make a call. I reached for the old rotary phone near the back hallway, the one Delara hadn't unplugged because it made the house look vintage. I dialed the number Ruthie had written in perfect cursive on the back of a church pamphlet. "Legal aid of Rosevale County." A woman answered. Her voice was steady, measured. Evelyn Thorne speaking. I introduced myself. Told her I wasn't sure if I was calling too late. "You're not," she said. "Why don't you come in today?" The building sat tucked behind the town library, a brick square with a crooked sign and a wheelchair ramp that creaked when I stepped on it. Evelyn was waiting at the door. She couldn't have been more than 55 with a silver streak in her bun and reading glasses that hung low on her nose. She didn't offer pity, Just a chair, a cup of tea, and a pad of yellow paper. Let's start with what you remember, she said. So I did. How I signed Cassian's mortgage papers without reading. How I trusted him when he said it was just formality. How they moved me from the guest room, to the basement, to the garage. How I didn't have a key to the front door. How I was told to eat less, to do more, to not make noise. She took notes without interruption. When I paused, her eyes were kind but sharp. We have a case. What does that mean? It means they don't get to erase you. The next weeks were a blur of motion. Evelyn requested land title documentation from the county clerk. Turns out my name was still listed as a primary owner. Cassian had added himself and restructured the deed, but not with independent legal counsel. Big mistake on his part. I provided every record I still had in an envelope, labeled just in case. Old tax returns, scans of handwritten letters Cassian had sent asking for temporary access to equity. Evelyn highlighted every phrase that screamed manipulation. Then came the documentation of abuse. Ruthie filed a sworn affidavit describing what she witnessed: the garage, the cold, the trash bins. She even included the date she saw me limping in wet socks. Evelyn gave me a tiny voice recorder the size of a pen cap. We're not here to ambush, she said. We're here to show the truth in their own words. I recorded quiet snippets. Delara complaining about how much groceries cost with an extra mouth. Cassian joking, it's like having free housekeeping, she doesn't even charge overtime. One evening, Delara muttered, we should have put her in assisted living, at least there. Someone would wipe the counters properly. I didn't flinch, I just pressed record. I started keeping what Evelyn called reclamation notes. Each night under the garage's single bulb, I'd write 3 things. 1. What they took from me today. 2. What I still own inside me. 3. What I will no longer tolerate. It was healing in a way I hadn't expected. Not loud, but steady, like knitting warmth from thread you thought too frayed to hold. Then the letter came. A formal legal complaint was sent to Cassian's business address, not the house. Evelyn knew better than to create a scene that Delara could weaponize. Still, it didn't take long. 2 nights later, he came into the garage door creaking like it had something to say. He held the letter in both hands, face flushed. Are you serious, Mom? I didn't answer. After everything we've done for you. His voice pitched high. You're going to sue me. I stood up, my knees crackled beneath me, but I didn't shake. You didn't do anything for me, I said. You did it to me. He blinked. The line between his brows deepened. You're being dramatic. You took my home, I said. You told me I ate too much. You locked me in a garage. That's not. You made me small in the name of gratitude. You fed me shame and called it care. He stared at me, I think, for the first time, really saw me. I stepped closer. I don't want revenge, Cassian. I want my name back. Then I walked past him, up the stairs, into the hallway light. I didn't look back. 3 days later, we met in court. Evelyn filed for an emergency injunction to freeze all assets tied to my name. Cassian's company credit card bounced at the gas station. Delara's account was flagged. Her face, I heard, turned white at the boutique counter when her payment failed. They hadn't even known I had rights left. They thought I was too old, too grateful, too tired to fight. But I wasn't. And when we stood before the judge, I wasn't alone. The courthouse in Roseville Creek wasn't grand. No marble floors, no flags billowing outside. Just an aging building with beige walls and linoleum that curled at the corners. But when I walked through those doors with Evelyn beside me and Ruthie trailing behind with a thermos of chamomile tea, I felt taller than I had in years. Cassian was already there, hair gelled, tie straight. Delara sat next to him in a navy sheath dress and pearls like a politician's wife on damage control. Neither of them looked at me. The bailiff called our case. Virell, elder abuse and financial exploitation. I felt my stomach turn at the word. Abuse. Not just rudeness, not ingratitude, abuse. But I kept walking. We sat before a female judge with gray curls tucked neatly into a bun and eyes sharper than a blade. Evelyn opened. She laid out the facts with no theatrics. That I had owned my property outright for 34 years. That Cassian had altered legal ownership and used the house to secure a business loan without independent legal counsel for me. That I had been moved into a garage. That my living space was unheated, unsafe, and at times unsanitary. That I was expected to work as a domestic helper without compensation, without agreement, and under constant emotional denigration. She submitted audio files, photographs, a timeline of my relocation from guest room to basement to garage. Then came the witness statement. Ruthie stood, hands shaking slightly, but her voice clear as spring rain. She wasn't living, she was surviving, and even that was getting harder. Dalara's lawyer objected on the grounds of familial complexity. The judge overruled. Cassian's defense was thinner than I expected. His lawyer tried to frame me as emotionally unstable, elderly, and forgetful, prone to exaggeration. They claimed I had consented to the living arrangements, that the mortgage paperwork was a shared family strategy, that I preferred privacy. Then they played a recording. It was me, my own voice, saying, "This is just temporary. I'll adjust." But Evelyn rose calm. "Temporary," she said, "does not mean consent. And adjusting to abuse is not agreement, it is survival." The judge nodded, slowly, thoughtfully. She looked at me. "Do you wish to speak, Mrs. Virell?" I stood. I didn't read from my notebook. I didn't bring a speech. I just opened my mouth and let the truth out. I raised him with everything I had. I gave him my time, my youth, my home. And when I got old, when my knees failed and my voice cracked, he made me feel like a burden. I paused, let the silence settle. Then he put me in a garage, like a box you don't want but can't throw out. Dalara flinched. Cassian looked down. "I'm not here to destroy anyone," I said. "I just want to stop disappearing." The judge closed the file. Her verdict came not with drama, but with finality. This court finds the mortgage transfer to have been executed under duress, without proper legal representation, and in violation of state protections for vulnerable adults. The asset will be returned to Ms. Odelyn Virell in full. Cassian shifted in his chair. The judge continued. Furthermore, the court recognizes emotional and financial abuse as substantiated. Mr. Cassian Virell will be subject to restitution of profits gained from the illegal mortgage arrangement and serve 6 months of supervised community service, effective immediately. Dalara gasped. The judge turned to her. "Given your participation and failure to report, you will serve a suspended sentence with mandatory counseling and ethical caregiving and a permanent restriction from co-managing financial affairs of any dependent adult." The gavel dropped. It was done. Cassian stood slowly, his face pale. He looked at me for the first time not as a mother, but as a woman he had underestimated. Our eyes met. He opened his mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to plead. I turned and walked away. In the hallway, Evelyn squeezed my hand. "You were brilliant." Ruthie offered me the thermos. "Warm tea," she said. "You earned something sweeter than justice today." I took a sip, closed my eyes. It tasted like chamomile and freedom. Back home, the garage was already being emptied. The deed had been transferred back by end of week. The business loan Cassian had tethered to my name collapsed. He tried to salvage it, but his credit froze once restitution kicked in. Dalara went quiet on social media. The yoga studio paused for reflection. Sarah sent me a drawing through Ruthie crayon stick figures, holding hands under a yellow sun. The word, "Grandma," spelled in wobbly pink letters. I kept it on my bedside table. For the first time in years, I slept in a real bed again. With a window and light. I didn't rebuild everything at once. I moved back into my little farmhouse 2 weeks after the verdict. The screen door still creaked. The wheat hadn't been planted in years. But the sun still hit the porch steps just right at 7:30 a.m. And when I opened the kitchen window, the wind still smelled like dust mint and old memory. I unpacked slowly, my recipe box, the chipped mug Harlan bought for our 10th anniversary, the photo of us in front of the barn, his hand on my waist, mine on his heart. Ruthie visited every Thursday. She brought lemon bars and gossip from the senior center. Sometimes we just sat in silence knitting beside the radio. Evelyn sent a letter handwritten. "You didn't just win a case," she wrote. "You reminded people that being older doesn't mean being disposable." One morning a letter came. Cassian's handwriting. Careful, slanted. It said, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope one day you'll let me earn back something I lost." I folded it, tucked it in my drawer, didn't reply. Some things don't need closure, only distance. Now when I sit on this porch with my tea, the birds still gather near the feeder. The quiet isn't lonely anymore. It's earned. They thought I was weak because I was silent. But strength doesn't always raise its voice. Sometimes it just walks out of the garage and never looks back. What would Reddit say? Was I cruel, or did justice finally speak? Drop your vote in the comments below. Number 1. She deserved respect. Number 2. He didn't deserve mercy. And tell me, where in the world are you listening from? Subscribe for more real stories of betrayal, justice, and the quiet revenge that changes everything.